Series 0, Season 3, Episode 29. I'm your host this week, Jenna Anderson. Joining me today for what is sure to be a very big show is Aaron Perrine.
A lot of stuff has happened since the last time we saw all of your wonderful faces. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Jamie Jurak.
Good morning. It's good to be back.
We're so happy to have you back. It was not the same to say the words Olivia Colman and not have you in your presence, because it doesn't feel the same. And then back on the show after a very fun first appearance recently is Nick Valdez.
Oh, howdy, everybody. Thanks for having me again. I just coming in right at the end here.
We're very happy to have you. BD is currently on his way to what is sure to be a very, very weird San Diego Comic-Con. We'll get into why very shortly. But so I'm hosting in his stead. And I will also bring up, in case you didn't listen to last week, we will be doing a Daredevil and Elektra review episode on August 9th to kind of hype up Deadpool 3 and get into the vibe of appreciating those movies. So if you haven't already rented or bought your copies, you have plenty of time to still do so. So because that's going to be a really fun episode. But yeah, so we'll dive into the news of the week, starting with the fact that SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, is now on strike as of last week. So now production on anything Marvel related that was still in production in the writers is now shut down. It means Deadpool 3 and Venom 3. It also means we are so much further away from getting the Fantastic Four cast because you can't make casting negotiations during this time. So our permanent hell of being in that limbo continues. But how do we feel about this? I know it's kind of inevitable. As we were saying, it's definitely going to affect stuff at Comic-Con, but like, how do we feel about the union being on strike and how it impacts Marvel?
I mean, here's what I keep saying. It's like, it's a bummer that we're not having junkets and premieres and Comic-Cons the way it is. It's like, yeah, it sucks, but it's like, it's necessary. It's the more and more certain people say certain things. It's like, wow, it's shocking. Like they just deserve what they're asking for, and it's crazy that they're not getting it. And it's a bummer how much it affects, especially like living here in Los Angeles. It's like I wasn't here during the pandemic, but I know people have been like compared. It's like a similar vibe, and just in terms of there's nothing to do. But boy, oh boy, this needs to happen. So, it's wild. This whole thing is really wild, and like just crazy weird stuff happening. Like Sean Gunn did that interview about being on Gilmore Girls on Netflix, and how he was there protest Netflix, and then the interview got taken down because of verbiage. And then he did another video. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Aaron, Nick, do you have anything to add?
Sorry about that. No. My thing is, this wouldn't be happening without a reason. And, we are here, we've seen that reason, and that reason has happened. And now this is now happening. I agree with Jamie. This is all, a bummer for us as fans and those who work on these things as like, okay, now we have to be a little more creative, But I mean, at the end of the day, it should work out the way it's supposed to. I will just say that.
Right. I mean, it's got the definite air of like Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes as far as media availability for certain individuals are concerned. I'm like, you could have just sat there and ate your food and nobody would have said anything. And it continues to happen. I don't think we're out of it yet either. Was that in Deadline or was that in the Times, the House comment?
That was in Deadline. It was an anonymous studio executive in Deadline. Yeah.
One of the wildest things I've ever seen in print. And you've seen some whoppers, man. Like me and Nick were watching wrestling when like The Rock announced that they got Osama bin Laden. And that's like level of like surreal. What is happening? Why is this the venue in which I'm learning this information? It's very crazy. I'm hopeful that the writers get what they want and the actors get what they want. I mean, we'll talk about some of the repercussions of said strike later on some offerings on regular TV that I think might complicate all of this even further. But yeah, it's a bummer. I hope BD can actually go talk to some comics people. Jim will dig up everybody. If nothing else, our buddies like Rob Liefeld and them, they will happily talk to us. Seth MacFarlane will talk to us
yes,
about whatever for a whole day. We'll just go live on Instagram Live if that's what you all
Ask him
want.
about that Spawn movie again.
Ask him with the
Yeah.
Spawn movie
Absolutely.
that you know they cloned Tyrone to make. That's a deep weird cut. Isn't Jamie supposed to be Spawn? Like, is it
Yes,
still happening?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
so long. It's
Yeah.
been so long. But yeah, it's a weird time. Everybody, settle in.
Absolutely. And kind of on the topic of that, Bob Iger did a very big interview with CNBC right as the strike was kind of coming into effect. There's a lot of things that he said that we're not going to talk about because it is just getting into the weeds of the strike of it all. But he did make a comment about specifically Marvel and Star Wars on Disney Plus. So Jamie, take it away.
He said, here we go. He said, Marvel's a great example of that. They had not been in the TV business at any significant level. Not only did they increase their movie output, but they ended up making a number of television series. And frankly, it diluted focus and attention. That is, I think, more of the cause than anything. First of all, not on any significant level. Ever heard of a show that ran for 7 years on a little network called ABC titled Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Bob Iger? Because I have. Actually, Clark Gregg did respond to this article and he just typed, bro. That's like rude. What a rude thing to say just in general. That's not really the full point of this quote is to defend Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but that's what I was put on this earth to do. But like, the things he said about the strike were like way crazier than this. But this is still like quite a thing to say. I'm going to leave it to you all to react to this.
I hate to say it, but like I can see some sort of point that he's making, and I almost agree with it, purely in the sense of the amount of time that it takes, as we've said on the show a million times, the amount of like pure hours it takes to now consume the MCU and follow the MCU is so much wider than it ever was before Endgame. And I think that probably has changed a lot of casual fans' relationships with it when there were at one point, you know, a new episode of Marvel television every single week for like a year. And so I don't disagree with him. I disagree with him on some other things that he said, but in this argument, I can almost see where he's coming from. But yeah, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that show was on for so long. Like, glad that I knew giving you the story. I was like, Jamie's going to celebrate Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So thank God for that.
In the old, like, delinquent child tradition, when you break a window with a baseball, you immediately hand the bat to someone else. You just do it. You just go, you just don't look at them, you just hand it to them and like, nah, it was them. And I feel like that's that for Bob Chapek's decision-making here. I think that's really what's going on at the foot. He's really like, the thing you have to remember about Iger getting brought back by Disney is that he was really brought back as like a Roomba to like restore order from all the stuff that had gone wrong, I guess, in his like absence. And it has proven to be harder than maybe he imagined to fix all of this, especially with the strike going on, both strikes going on now. You know, it hasn't been easy. I challenge anyone who finds it hard to watch all this stuff. I see the video counts of some of our friends on the internet. You're watching the recap things that all these people make. Shout out, hi Ryan Airy, hi Heavy Spoilers, hi all these people, right? And Eric. I know Voss is watching this. So, like, I get it to a point, but also, other than we'll get into later how much you need to watch of the previous MCU to enjoy Secret Invasion, but I don't know how everybody on Earth watched WandaVision. That's not why you didn't like Multiverse of Madness. All of you watched it. Now, if you're watching this right now, you watched those shows. Like at least the first year. I feel like everybody, I feel confident saying everybody here who's watching this stream right now who can hear the sound of my voice watched WandaVision, Loki, and Falcon Winter Soldier. Because what else was there to do? You were literally inside like the rest of us watching it. Right, after that, maybe it gets a little squirrely. But also, what other things, like, okay, you didn't watch Shang-Chi. Like, what part of that influenced you going to see Guardians or Spider-Verse or No Way Home? Everybody on Earth also saw Spider-Man No Way Home, so I guess that's a moot point too. I just find it interesting that he's trying to shift the blame of like, this is why the money doesn't look right. It was all done in front of some weird retreat in Idaho as well, which I'm just like, isn't this more of the issue than like this show costing a lot of money? Like, you know what I mean? That yak over there is like, yo, chill. Chill.
Wasn't Iger also still around when Disney Plus launched? And
Yeah, so like he kind of
launch.
he started the the forming of Disney Plus, and then Chapek kind of took over a lot of the content stuff, and so it's like, yeah, it is this weird kind of like shifting the blame back and forth. Like, yeah, Nick, how do you feel about this?
I mean, I agree with what Aaron said. It's not the it's not the TV, because I love all the TV stuff. It gave us She-Hulk. We got She-Hulk. We got Megan Thee Stallion in the MCU because of Disney Plus's TV stuff. So my thing is, maybe we should have had less movies, or maybe we should have had, instead of an Ant-Man 3. Maybe someone else could have had a movie. Maybe we could have had a Hawkeye movie instead. It was the scheduling. It's the fact that we had all this TV, but we still had to get all the movies we had to get, which was like, did we really? And after Phase 4, the trauma era, it's like, did we really need all that? In retrospect, probably not. I would have gladly seen, a She-Hulk movie or something, like, just, it was just a scheduling thing. It's like there was clearly no communication between the two sets, despite we needing to watch all of it. And that's all it is. It's like, maybe you should have calmed down on the movies. That's my thing. I know they're movies, they're the whole thing, but come on.
Nick makes a good point, because I liked every single TV show that's come out, but I have some issues with the movies. So something to think about, Bob.
I do think, off of Nick's point, I think it's a matter of like, what is the best format to tell the story versus we just need multiple MCU TV shows to fill out our Disney Plus catalog. I think, like, as I've argued on the show multiple times, there's a version of Falcon and the Winter Soldier that is a movie that probably could have hit in a completely different way. I could almost at this point maybe make that argument with Secret Invasion. So it's like, it's about like the format, and it's about having intent with the story and not just trying to create more and more hours of content. So yeah, I will have to see how all of this goes.
I also want to point out, for some inside baseball for the people at home, Chapek was the one making the decisions about what projects went where. That's why I say he's laying it at the feet of him, because there's a lot of reporting to indicate, nothing out of their mouths, of course, but reporting to indicate that Kevin Feige, during Phase 4 or whatever, and like the beginning of Phase 5, was not determining where the projects would end up. So if you're upset that this show felt like it could have been a movie instead or something, the previous leadership would be some of the things to point to on that regard. So yeah,
absolutely. Going into the next movie, which I know some of us are very excited for.
Oh man. So Entertainment Weekly dropped a big old article with images from the Marvels, and used a lot of information in there. There's a lot, if you've been missing Iman Vellani and Tiana Paris, there's a lot there for you, and Brie too, all of them together, and the dynamic is already shining through, which it's going to need. Hopefully any clips that might surface, I hope that they really do surface the sort of dynamic between the three of them, because you're going to need it without them being able to do press for the movie. According to Brie, though, this was the plan for years, teaming up with Ms. Marvel and whatever they're going to call Monica Rambeau. We have some conflicting reports on that as well. Brie said, this was something Kevin and I had talked about from the beginning, that this was the way the story made sense to go. It doesn't have to be intense and heavy. There's a lot of humor, and I think this movie is very funny, and we all laughed a lot while making it. So that's like fun. If you've been looking for more fun in the Marvel movies, because there were some people who felt like Guardians was kind of intense in parts, and it is. And then Wakanda Forever is 2 hours of us all sobbing at each other. And I don't know what happened to Ant-Man. I blacked out. It was great. I don't remember what emotions I went through. I just did that for Jamie so that she
no
would laugh.
Emotions. That's the thing, Aaron. You had no emotions. That's why you can't
look, I was sitting the second. Did we go see it together? Because we didn't. Okay. That is a mistake. If I had a time thing, like a dial of destiny, if you will, I would go back and go watch this with Jamie just so I could experience her rage and have it like radiate off of her. It would be very fun. Apparently, also, Iman Vellani is now the walking like series Bible for the MCU. They had an unofficial motto on set that if you don't know, ask Iman. Brie said, I've learned I just trust Amon because she really has her timelines in order. She's the one that's always schooling us. I don't know how old Carol is without her. She really does the math. So this backs up what Kevin Feige calls her Unabomber notebook that she carries everywhere with all the details and everything, which is very funny, very, very silly. If at some point, these behind the scenes things, we don't get a dual lesson thing with her and Tom Hiddleston on whiteboards, like dueling about the specifics. That is a missed opportunity. I would really enjoy that. Speaking of Tom Hiddleston, his fiance, Zawe Ashton, is our villain for the Marvels. They've confirmed all of this. So I'm like sitting there like, John, yeah.
The trailer makes it very clear that she is a bad guy. And yeah, it sounds like she's playing Dar-Benn.
Yeah, it sounds like she's playing Dar-Benn. And she got some advice from Hiddleston before, filming. She said one of the main takeaways from our conversations was what you put into Marvel, you get back. He said, if you go into this with an open heart and great work ethic, and just want to provide an amazing experience for the fans, you'll have an amazing experience on those sets. And he really empowered me in that way. So it sounds like everybody was having a good time. The vibes are high. I hope we get another trailer. I'm the person holding the banner for me. It's just me and Neebs holding the banner for Miss Marvel over here. And Nick running behind us at full sprint with the Town of Paris banner. So how does everybody feel about the Marvels?
This article, obviously all these interviews were done way before the strike, but I'm glad that they saved this article for this moment where we could just get the extra serotonin of it. I love the dynamic that it sounds like everybody had on this movie. There were so many other quotes I didn't include in the rundown of just talking about just the creative vibe and how Nia DaCosta felt like she had to kind of not be too much of a comic book fan because she was geeking out about everything so much.
Kevin Feige told her stop being such a nerd.
I know, and I love that. I love that so much. I love the amount of just nerd energy that is radiating off of this movie and just the nice vibes and everything. This, I can't wait for this movie. I'm gonna get my hopes probably way too high, but I'm so excited for this movie.
That's how I feel. I'm ready. I'm ready for these three ladies to be ladying together. It's gonna be so good. It's probably the last movie we're gonna get for a while. I really hope it's good just to end on a high note. But I have faith. I'm excited, and I'm glad they got to do this interview. It's a bummer because that press tour would have been so good. What a good press tour! But oh well, Iger. Yeah. So
I love how you worded it of last movie ever. That's how it almost sounded. It's there will be other movies, but yeah,
it's the last Marvel movie for a while. I think
at the moment.
Yes,
Who
they're
knows?
coming back.
Next week it'll probably change.
Yeah, what was the 2007 strike? 8 months?
Something like that. I don't know.
Too long. It was too long.
Yeah. I remember, I was in high school and I still deeply remember being what am I going to do? I still remember watching the Golden Globes as a news announcement. And that was wild.
Wow. Jesus. Nick, how do you feel about the Marvels update?
I'm ready
as Aaron
for
mentioned.
fun. Yeah, I'm ready for fun. And what stings about the television comments once more is that without the TV shows, we wouldn't have Tiana Paris and Iman Vellani in these things. And Tiana Paris is a movie star, and Iman Vellani is ready to be a movie star. That look of them in the suits, the full new suits, and that cover. I'm in. The vibes are immaculate. I'm ready. I'm ready for fun. I'm ready for just action. And it's something we need. We still have yet to have that trauma-free Marvel movie. So please, just let us laugh a little bit. Let us enjoy a Marvel movie.
You say that, and yet I know Monica is going to probably have so much beef with Carol and trauma with Carol leaving her. So, we're going to be laughing, but we're also going to be very sad about Carol, abandoning her for 30 years and going off to space. So, we can't escape the trauma, as Nicole has attested on this show multiple times. There's always a way to work in the trauma. But keeping the Marvel train going, Kamala Khan and Iman Vellani are like taking over the world this week. It's kind of impressive. So, as Aaron mentioned, with the strike and with a lack of things to air on television, Miss Marvel is going to be airing on ABC in its entirety. So the first 3 episodes are going to air on August 5th, and then the last 3 episodes are going to air on August 12th. I am so glad that they're doing this, because just to help prime people who don't have a Disney Plus subscription and who might want to watch the Marvels, I almost wish they were doing this closer to the Marvels, but I'll take it. And then Iman is also co-writing the new Miss Marvel comic, which is kind of relaunching Kamala as a mutant. As I have written for the site and as I have said on this show, I don't necessarily like the way that we got there, but I'm always a fan of like actors writing their characters in comics, and Iman seems like the expert at all of this, so I'm very excited to see how she writes a comic. But how do you guys feel about this?
I mean, it's probably a weird time when everybody's talking about residuals showing broadcasting on. I mean, I'm keeping my hands clean of that, but
yeah,
I do have to mention that's a weird thing. It's exciting, but also I wish there wasn't a huge asterisk with it.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time they put one of the D Plus shows on TV, because they played The Mandalorian earlier this year.
It was just
February.
like one episode though. So like having the entire show, this is definitely the first time that they've done that.
Right. And I mean, it's helpful for introduction for people who haven't seen the show. I laugh because as much as we have like arguments about Miss Marvel and like the last entries of it, it's still the highest rated of these Disney Plus shows on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. It is good. The bones are great, and people are really going to enjoy her as first. And I love that we're just accepting that she's a mutant. Like when it first got said, I was like, ooh, some people online are going to be very upset. Like there's a couple people in our Phase Zero community that are very invested in the humans, and I understand, but also with the MCU's ability to kind of just call their own shots, I was like, there's no way. Like you can have her be the center of whatever X-Men stuff that you're going to do eventually, whenever you get there, however we get there. And she's really good casting, like just as the character. So I'm excited to see what happens both in the book and like with on TV. What if it has like these like better ratings than it did on Disney? Then what? It'll be like, maybe this thing should have just been on ABC and then Clark Gregg should have shown up at the end. Who knows? Who knows? We can shoot for the dreams. We can shoot for the sky, Jamie.
Oh, I love that energy. I recently, surprise, I rewatched all of Ms. Marvel very recently. It's so good. Team Cameron. I think Nick brings up the good point. The residual point of it all is like, is that even in a contract? I wonder what with Disney Plus shows, what would happen if they get put on ABC, because this hasn't happened a lot. I'm very interested to know about that. So now you've got me thinking. But I do like the idea that some people that haven't seen it, especially younger people, because this is such like a teen tween adorable time. And I think it's awesome that she's writing the comic because she's like, that picture of her in the Halloween costume long before she ever got this role is like my favorite thing in the world. It's just she's has the MCU Bible in her brain. Like she's perfect for all of this, and I'm just so happy for her to like live in the dream, girl. Good and talented, and like she deserves it. That's just like the perfect everything. So
I love it. I will say to Jamie's point, like that's why I loved how with DC they had Stargirl air both on the CW and on Max, because then it made it so much easier to find the wider audience of like if you were a younger viewer who might not have a streaming service subscription, you could still enjoy absolutely a masterful show. But yeah, so we're gonna take a quick
Stargirl.
Yes, I mourn that show. It had the perfect ending, but I still mourn that show every single day. And I know Nick and Nicole also feel the same way. So we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some Guardians of the Galaxy news. And Haley Atwell has some thoughts on Multiverse of Madness. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Phase Zero. Haley Atwell, currently starring in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, a movie that Jamie and I swear have been in a text chain about for like the past 3 days. Like we have so many thoughts on this movie. So she was on the Happy Sad Confused podcast, and she had some thoughts on how Captain Carter was in Multiverse of Madness. She said, I'm like, that wasn't my choice, when she was like, I can do this all day, and then followed by she's immediately cut in half by a frisbee. And audiences being like, she can't do it all day. Apparently you can't, so egg on your face. That doesn't really serve Peggy very well. I don't disagree with her at all. Like, I still love Multiverse of Madness. I know I'm still on the DVD box, so I almost feel like I have to say that. But I definitely was underwhelmed by her appearance in that movie, and especially seeing her now in Mission Impossible felt like I was almost watching her act for the very first time. Like, I saw sides of her performance that I didn't even know were possible. So how do we feel about this and her kind of being underwhelmed?
I'm torn because from her perspective as an actor and as someone who is like played Peggy for so long, I totally respect where she's coming from, because like, yeah, that is a bummer to show up and do that. But also it's like, this isn't her Peggy. This is not the Peggy that she's played. This is an alternate Peggy. And that scene, I'm sorry, is amazing. I love that scene so much. I think her saying that and then immediately get chopped in half is hilarious, because every single person on that group underestimated my girl and they found out. That's what happened. They found out. And I think it's funny. I personally love it, and I wouldn't change a thing about that scene. But I absolutely would probably feel the same way if I was her. I totally respect that. But sorry, that's what happened.
Defending Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., defending Wanda. We just covering all of Jamie's bases today.
Absolutely true. I mean, the whole scene is built to make you realize just how powerful Wanda is, and that means some of your faves are gonna get dealt with. Listen, I've had to watch Lashana Lynch die 2 times in the last 2 years on screen, where I was like, no, my girl, no. Yeah. You know, it happens to all of us. What I want to say account. I almost said it unedited, Nick, and I can't say that on this show. But people die every day, B. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, she lasted longer than Jim from The Office, right? At Blackwell. So, I think she was served well enough for what the scene was, and she was cool. Like, she got to be cool, Captain Carter on screen. I feel like that was enough for me as a fan, but like, I agree with what she was saying too. Like, yeah, as a performer, probably not, but for me, I was like, yeah, get it.
Also, well, can we be real? We haven't seen the last of her as Captain Carter, like with this multiverse stuff. And then what if, like, they seem like there's going to be something near Secret Wars where she comes out of a portal and everybody goes, oh my God, it's Haley Atwell. Like, it's a meme.
Especially after Mission, especially like after people really like her performance in Mission, it feels like Marvel needs to capitalize on that in some way, and if not, they're absolutely missing the boat, because she was very good in that movie.
Yeah, it'll do the lingering pause like in Mission Impossible when she turns around when she's first introduced, and you look at her face for a minute, and you're like, wow, she's a movie star.
The problem is that when Mission Impossible 8 finally goes back into production, it's gonna like consume her life for a long time. That movie is going to, once it finally comes back, I read it when she was making Dead Reckoning, she was like, yeah, there was 3 months on set where I didn't even talk, because that's how long it takes to film those action sequences. So they might want her back, but McHugh is gonna have her to himself for a while.
Thank God. And then shifting gears to another part of the MCU. We were going to cover this on last week's show, and we got just way too short for time. But I'm glad that Jamie's here, because it is a big long quote for Jamie to read.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready to quote it up. So James Gunn dropped some Guardians of the Galaxy nuggets that folks couldn't get to last week, but we're here and let's go. Him and Chris Pratt have talked about the Star-Lord movie idea, because of course Guardians, that was the button, the legendary Star-Lord will return. He said, Chris and I forever have talked about how great it would be to do a legendary Star-Lord movie, a story with Star-Lord on Earth trying to adapt to the environment of Earth in the same way that somebody else might try to adapt to the alien alien environment of outer space. I feel like we should address that before we get into the long quote because it's about something totally different. When they first announced, or when they first did that in the end button, I was like, really? Of all the Guardians, he's the one? Like, I like him. I like that character. I'm just like, but he's not the one I'd want to see again first. But I do like this idea. It's interesting. I think it's inevitable. It might be 7 years from now before we get it. But are you guys interested in this concept?
I think on paper, yes. Like Chip Zdarsky has a very, very good Star-Lord solo comic. If you have not read that, go read that immediately. So there is definitely like a lot that you could cover in a Star-Lord solo thing. I'm just honestly at this point with Guardians where I don't need to see any of them ever again, because I am so happy with like the way that their endings wrapped up in Volume 3 that now, especially that James is over at DC and is probably not coming back to Marvel anytime soon to do this Star-Lord movie, I feel like just let them kind of live on. I always interpret that post-credit scene tag as like he just is living on doing adventures. We might not see those adventures right away, but he's just out there. But how do you guys feel about it?
I'm good. I'm good on that. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next.
They're not gonna bring y'all really think they're not gonna bring back Garfield? That's crazy. Come on now. He a whole Super Mario. Stop.
They have never said somebody will return without bringing them back. I think that means they have decided they're bringing him back.
As Sophie just in the comment, like special presentations would be like a perfect formula. If you really need to tell Star-Lord's story again, just tell it in a solo context there. But who knows? And then we have another really long quote about Rocket and Groot. Yeah,
I'm ready. So someone asked who Tibius Lark was, and Gunn revealed the idea of a Rocket and Groot first meeting short film idea. For a short film idea, that sure is a quote. All right. I wrote a short film explaining the origin of how Rocket and Groot met. It was even storyboarded and location scouted, and we did test footage for it. It was seen at SDCC in the trailer we cut for it after 12 days of shooting. But I didn't have time to do it as Volume 1 amped up. In it, Tibius, Lark, Groot, and Rocket were all imprisoned in a deep well in the ground. Tibius, I hope I'm saying that right, was on the verge of dying. He explained to Rocket that he had been caring for Groot for years. He was a former zookeeper in a shitty galactic side zoo. He explained he had saved Groot, who was on an exhibit there, and that Groot was a loyal friend. He asked Rocket to please take care of him, and then he died. As he died, Rocket looked down in the dark cell and noticed he was a robot. The lower body of his body smashed open and mechanical. The guards above ground heard something rumbling, and they turned and saw Rocket and Groot bursting up from the ground. Rocket on Groot's shoulder and Groot's hands was a machine gun made from Tibius Lark's body, and he shot all the guards, and they escaped, and they were together until they met the Guardians. That's who Tibius Lark was. I was reading that all in real time for my first one. I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't need that because I just read it all, and now it's in my brain. I got it. I don't need to see it, but that's a nice idea.
It would have been amazing if we had gotten this like at the time of Volume 1, especially given like how little we knew about Rocket's backstory. Like I love this. I would have absolutely devoured this if we got it. Obviously, like I said, James is going to be busy elsewhere, so we probably will never get this, but it's very cool to know like what that would have been.
I mean,
Everyone
cool.
else seems to agree.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. Thank you. Next. I'm good. I'm good on all the Guardians content. Like, I'm sorry.
I know Aaron probably agrees.
Yeah, Aaron just silently.
I'm just laughing over here because it's funny. That's all. We can go. We can move.
I will just say I miss the Marvel one-shot era where we could just do these one-off stories. Like I miss that either it's like a special presentation, which even then, who knows when we're ever getting one of those again, or it's a show or a movie. Like I loved having these very short form stories. So that would have been a really cool one to see. So we are going to take another quick 1-minute break. And when we're back, we're going to break down episode 5 of Secret Invasion. So stay tuned. Full spoilers. Welcome back to Phase Zero. We are now going to break down episode 5 of Secret Invasion, full spoilers. So we'll just go around and share our reactions first. Jamie, since you, especially because you've been absent from the past 2 and we haven't heard your reactions lately, how are you feeling about this episode and Secret Invasion thus far?
Enjoying it. As I said from the beginning, this is definitely the kind of show where I can't fully like say how I feel until it's over. I cannot wait to do my obligatory full binge to like really soak it in. I do agree with what you said earlier. Like, could this have been a movie? I don't know. I'm bummed that we're spoilers. I'm really bummed that we've lost Talos. But I had such a death happen in a thing in a project this week that upset me so much that this was like, I get it. I don't have the feelings left to have feelings about this. But let me just say, Olivia Colman is killing it. And if they don't bring her back in a million more projects, I'm going to be sad because she is my favorite part of the show. And not just because she's one of my favorite actors on earth. She's just so good. I'm also really glad that because after the 3rd episode, I think I said, I was like, I don't understand why we're not acknowledging that his wife is a Skrull, but he seems to never be with her in her true form. And that really bothered me. And I'm glad that it's being addressed. I'm glad that Emilia Clarke was like kind of spat that right in her face, and you could tell it hit a nerve. And so I'm glad that that's being discussed. Yeah, I'm really into what's happening. I think this was like one of my most anticipated things. So I'm like, is it living up to the hype in my brain? I don't quite think it is, but I am enjoying it.
Aaron, how about you?
As always, it's just good to have Sam back, man. Sad about Talos, although we still don't know. Maybe Ben Mendelsohn does, come out of nowhere like Poochie at the end. Who knows? But there have been so many fake outs that I just don't know. I do think poor Brandon is not here. Mm-hmm. The action scene when they're doing the siege on Fury and Priscilla's house is madness. I am trying to think of a Avengers fight where the violence is shown in such like detail, and I'm drawing a real blank. Like real dude got shot coming through the window and got impaled on the window pane, and I was like, Jesus Christ! I think I said out loud, like, oh my God. So it is interesting. I do like the dynamic of Emilia Clarke, a guy talking to her about like, why is it that you guys live apart, and like some of those dynamics. I'll write about that on the site later, but it is like all bubbling towards something interesting. And as Jenna will probably appreciate, they are borrowing from Tower of Babel so heavily that I feel like we have to talk about that at some point. So that's fun too.
Oh, I'll get into that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Nick, how do you feel about this episode and about the show thus far? Because you haven't been on during the Secret Invasion era.
So setting the table a bit, I've been very busy these last few weeks, so I kind of binged it all this morning. So as a binge, it's been very fun. I'm a Beto enjoyer. I loved Beto. This was the worst episode for me to love Beto, unfortunately. But other than that, like I do love its 80s action hero vibe in terms of Nick, like Sam Jackson getting to be the one man against the world kind of thing. So like I do love that. I don't really like a lot of it. So it seems kind of there's a lot of puzzle pieces getting thrown around and not a lot are seemingly connecting. I don't know if that's just because I binged it and maybe like I glossed over details or something. So I will admit that, but something about like I'm hoping in episode 6 it all comes together, because if it wants to be like a super tight spy thriller, it's missing it's missing the exposition dump. We're missing that. I was hoping episode 5 would be it, of someone sitting down and be like, this is how it all really works, because that's usually how it happens in episode 5. We get this is how it all really is, but hey, I watched it. So I'm sorry. I wish I could be more defined about that, but I watched it. I liked it for what it was. It was as good as it was.
Sometimes that's all you can do, and like we are so thankful that you did watch it. I agree with what everyone said, positive and negative. I liked parts of this episode, but I did not love this episode. I think that to Nick's point, we're introducing some schematics and some plot elements way too late in the game for me. I wish that the show would have just been more about those things from the jump, or would have like laid them a little bit more concretely, because where we're at now does not feel like where the show was going to start out at. But I'm still liking the character beats. I'm still loving the performances. I think that there is still potential to stick the landing. It's just like there's a lot of moving pieces and not all of them are necessarily working. Even to like the point with the action, even the fight with Gravik versus Beto and all of the people turning on him, I loved the action of that fight, but it felt a little hollow when, as we were saying on last week's show, we don't really know a lot of these other Skrulls. They just feel like they exist to just like do whatever Gravik is doing, and then suddenly they're turning on him. That was a little underwhelming. But Aaron mentioned it. We'll talk about it. The harvest is a thing that was established this episode. Nick Fury revealed that he stole all of the Avengers' DNA from the Battle of Endgame. This is not only Tower of Babel for Justice League. This is kind of sort of Project Batman Beyond from the animated DC stuff. This was a really interesting way to go about this. How do we feel about that plot detail just to start?
How did he get it?
He sent Skrulls into the field to get their blood from the Battle of New York and
every single one. Like
I guess he got a lot of Skrulls. There's like 1 million of them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's where I was lost. I was like, where did you get all that? Where did you get it? Yeah.
I think part of it is also we've never seen the cleanup of that, so we didn't know that like, what that effort actually looked like and whether or not there were Skrulls there. But Jamie, go ahead.
Oh, I'm like, Nick, really? You did that? Like, come on, man. There have been so many consequences to his actions, and he didn't see that collecting the Avengers blood all up into it and then scooping it all and making a little Avengers blood soup wasn't going to come back to bite you in the butt, man. Like, come on. But I did, when he was talking about it, I did think it was interesting when he said even Carol Danvers. That's the only name he dropped. And I think that's interesting. It makes me wonder how episode 6 is going to lead into the Marvels. I think we're going to get some kind of tag or something that sets up, because he's in that movie. It's just like, all right. I do, although I got Gravik with the Groot power is so dope. I really like that. But I don't need to see Gravik with a Captain Marvel power too. Like, that's a little extreme. But yeah, Nick, come on. What you doing?
How would that work too? Because it isn't like, I mean, I don't know, maybe y'all can explain it better, but her stuff is all cosmic, right? And it's not necessarily DNA based. So
I mean, it kind of like melded with her DNA when she had the whole explosion with Annette Bening in the middle of the blizzard. So that's just always the justification that I've had. So I'm sure like there's something in her DNA that can make her go binary. So that would probably be the power that Gravik would then have. But like I've also seen people in the comments say it seems like it was all just like one soup of DNA. Like it wasn't like individual strands of DNA, like based on the vial that Fury got from the cemetery. So that's weird in and of itself. Aaron, I'm sure you have thoughts on this reveal. How are you feeling?
I immediately tagged it as the Tower of Babel thing. Immediately, I just started laughing like, "Oh, delicious!" Because it doesn't make sense. Although it's funny because it does fit the government's MO. Because when there was no Captain America, they're like, "We'll just make our own. It's cool." You know, that means if something else bad happens, we just go into the lab and we get 5 teenagers with attitude and inject them with stuff and make them our Avengers anyway, right? It all being in one soup is really funny. Also, hysterically so. I feel like poor She-Hulk, like the weird sample that may or may not exist serves this exact sort of same purpose. So like this is the second or third time we've had weird like Hulk blood be in there. I'm placing a work pool right now on Bree showing up in the 6th one because she's been mentioned by name 3 times, which is weird. Her and another thing we'll get to, which would really be amazing, but that's probably not gonna happen in the show. Like, I find it interesting what's getting mentioned, like what MCU projects they're like tying it into, because we've gotten so much Iron Man 3, which is just random but delightful. There's a ton of the other movie we're just gonna talk about in a second, and there's like a lot of Captain Marvel in here, and I'm like, why do all this mentioning of Carol if she's not gonna pop up? Also, unfortunately, spoilers if you haven't seen those images from Entertainment Weekly, but there are definitely Skrulls in the background while Carol's talking to somebody on a J.J. Abrams spaceship. and I don't know why. I was like, what? Wait, Skrulls are still here? What's going on? It's interesting, you know?
I will also say, off of just Fury's whole thing, like a question I want to pose to everybody: do we buy? Because like they've brought it up multiple times of like, Fury, why don't you just call the Avengers? And he's basically like, I have to deal with this myself. Do we feel like it is that, or is it also part of it now that we know what the harvest is? Does he not want the Avengers to know that he stole their DNA?
That's probably part of it, because like, how many times has he, you know, done things and they're like, sir, Mr. Dude, hey, what you doing? I totally think that could be part of it. I do also want to say, a really funny thing to me about the gravesite scene is one, like we weren't waiting for the Fury costume like we wait on all shows for a costume. I think it's really funny. In episode 5,
it's a crime. Brandon's not here.
I know.
I also think it's hilarious that he had like one item per like grave. I keep my eye patch on my coat in here, one gun in here. Like, bodies could be filling those spaces. You could have fit all of those into one. And I thought that was really like, all right, Mr. Flashy, we get it.
I mean, as much as we love Nick Fury, he very much is the ops. So, you know, it's yeah, he's probably lying. It's definitely like if I tell them, they'll know I did it. And so he's dug this hole for himself, and I guess we'll see how he solves it by any means necessary.
I will say, we all assume that Gravik looks like, because the teaser thing that came out where it looks like he's a Super Skrull and he looks super buff, and it's like everyone's like, oh, it's Cull Obsidian. What if he does get the vial and he just has Hulk powers? Like, what if that actually did happen? It would be hysterical for all of us to be like, oh yeah, like that was in there, and then it'd be like, wait, what? Mark Ruffalo? No, not our boy, you know. But it's a lot of questions still. I've heard us say before on this show that there's a lot of things that have to be wrapped up by these finales, and I feel like this is one of the last of the pandemic era productions that was like deep in 2020, 2021. I hope that the next wave of these doesn't have that, because I think Jenna's got a point where it does feel like 1, 2, and 3 could have been condensed, and then we could have got to this idea of the harvest earlier and had people have conversations with Nick about the ethical dubiousness of, hey, you shouldn't be stealing your coworker's blood.
Absolutely. Because it's also just like, there were, as I've said with previous episodes, there were a lot of things that felt like they were spinning their wheels of like, oh, this episode and this episode feel very similar at the end of the day. And it's like, now knowing that this was percolating in the background, I almost wish we would have gotten to this sooner. But yeah. And then just pivoting to larger MCU stuff, I know Jamie's going to have thoughts because this is her favorite Phase 4 movie. Mason from Black Widow randomly showed up in this episode. I had to do a double take because I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay, because I haven't watched Black Widow in forever. But how do we feel that he's back? He was kind of providing the jet that Fury rode in on.
Well, I was excited. We all know how much I love Black Widow, and I think it's really funny that like his thing is trying to make sure that these people are getting some sleep. He's like, you need some rest, because he did the same thing with Nat, and I think that's really funny. I'm glad they brought him in because it makes sense that Fury would have the same contact as her with this kind of stuff. It was just good to see his face. Black Widow Hive Rise, favorite movie of Phase 4. I said it and I meant it. So I was excited about that connection.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had this ruined for me in Slack, but I really was excited. Like when he rolled up, I was like, oh, that's fun. That's actually kind of cool. That's the sort of stuff that you really want to see about this stuff, you know? And it feels like maybe Rick worked on the helicarrier at some point, which is like very interesting. Like with the hellscape we inhabit, it would be very easy to digitally insert him in the background of the Avengers or something and be like, oh, he's been there the entire time. But yeah, I was happy. A lot of Black Widow going on. The facial thing that she uses from Winter Soldier's there. Like, I'm sitting there in the background like, what of all the pulls? I wish Nat wasn't off the board, and I wish, you know, freaking Florence Pugh wasn't like one of the 5 biggest stars on Earth. So she could just come and Hurricane Rana somebody and then run off. swing out of frame with like macaroni and cheese. And be done.
If she would have showed up in episode 6, oh man! Like,
yeah, I know.
I feel like at very least, like Rachel Weisz could have been somebody who would have been really cool to show up in this show. I mean, also just because I want to see Rachel Weisz anywhere, but it's like I feel like since she's not in Thunderbolts to our knowledge, and we don't really know what's next for her story, if you played off of the like I'm a spy and how does that fit into the Skrull stuff, I feel like that would have been really cool. But yeah, and then we had the go ahead.
Oh, so no, they do say the mask is full body now in terms of like new technologies. So maybe she is there.
Who knows? Just between that and like binging all of the Mission movies, I'm like, I've had so many pieces of media where just a full face mask is just like a huge part of this. But yeah. And then I want to have us all go around before we wrap things up and just kind of share our predictions for the finale. As we were kind of saying, it could go anywhere, but how do you think that this could or should wrap up?
Because Nick called somebody and was like, it's time. Do we think who that could be? Do you think it's somebody like exciting, or is it just like Mason again? Like, because that's what I'm like, Coulson? I really don't think that's gonna happen. if I could have anything happen, if I had a dream happen, that's who he was talking to on the phone. I hope that they just, I don't think they will, because they never give us these kind of answers. I want to know how long Rhodey has been a Skrull. And I don't think he was a Skrull in Endgame. I think that would be a weird choice. But same with like Martin Freeman. Like I hope that they just give us some information. I would love to see the humans get broken out of their cells so that we can get that answer. But I don't foresee that happening. I'm as long as Olivia Colman doesn't die, I'll be happy with however this show ends.
Nick, what predictions do you have?
I thought he was calling Gravik. Because it's a TV phone call, and in TV you don't say hello or goodbye. You just, it's like, oh yeah, they picked it up in 2 seconds, and let's get down to business. So I thought that's where it was going. Let's settle this, yada yada yada, et cetera, 80s action movie. So my only thing is, I do hope it ends with telling us why this was ultimately important in the first place. Like, I mean, yes, Skrulls everywhere in the government, yes, et cetera. But it's like, in terms of Avengers level stuff, why do we need to care? Yes, Rhodey was an Avenger, and I do agree that it was probably post Endgame, because Rhodey in this show has been so different in personality that it was a clear indicator that he was probably a Skrull this whole time. But completely different Endgame. But point is, I just hope they tell us why this show needed to be a show.
To get Samuel L. Jackson an Emmy. That's why.
And get Don Cheadle another like guest actor nom inexplicably.
Does Nick Fury survive this? There we go. That's what I'll ask.
I'm 50-50. Like we've been saying that since week 1, because like the very Capital One commercial level Nick Fury that it seems like we're getting in the Marvels feels completely different from the Nick Fury that we've had so far. So I feel like he could die. I feel like the Marvels could even be a prequel. Like, who knows at this point? I don't know.
They've avoided all of that stuff. And the fact that, we still don't know what the last episode is kind of like at least there's that to look forward to for sure. I like my theory from last week where I said that whatever happens, the end of this has 2 things that probably happen. And that is Rhodey wakes up from the coma and goes back to his government job and gets played by Sharon. And that's what sets up Armor Wars. I think that we are I know, Jamie. I know. She's bad. I know. I know. But I feel like that's totally going to happen. And you got to have him get back up to Saber to start the Marvels. I think those are 2 things that are absolutely going down. And I think Nick is right. The more logical of the things is him calling Gravik to be like, let's end this. Like, like it's a dance battle. Like it's like you got served or something. But it would be really, really dope if it was Maria Hill or Talos. It would be very cool. Losing both of them kind of is like beans. I don't want Ben Middleton to go away, but I understand. So there's that. The other pie in the sky stuff probably not going to happen, but I could totally see that, or the very popular "there are 2 Nick Furies running around" thing being in the finale. I think that's I've come around on that. That might actually be real. Like, he always has a different hat. He made a very big show of switching to that hat during this episode in the patch, and he wasn't wearing the glasses. So I could easily see that. But I don't even want that. Just show me all of the weird stuff with Don Cheadle in the background of these movies being a Skrull. That's what I really want. I'm like, the whole last episode could not be them fighting. It could just be like the first 5 minutes of the Marvels being Brie punching Gravik through a wall, and then we just proceed with the movie. That would be fine. I'm cool with that.
Man, but Rhodey talking about choking Thanos in the crib can't be a Skrull. Just for my sake, I cannot be a Skrull doing that.
Prepare to be hurt.
I don't want that Rhodey.
Somebody else.
No,
there were strangers in your bed, Nick.
Also, because like to the point we were making earlier of just like how hard it is for general audiences to follow the MCU. If the last time they saw Rhodey, if they don't have a Disney Plus subscription, was Endgame, and then you go into the Armor Wars movie, if that actually happens, and you're like now knowing, oh, he was a Skrull and that wasn't who he was in Endgame, I feel like that would be very confusing needlessly. So yeah, I agree with everything. Go on.
I gotta ask a question too. Do you think Don pops up in Ironheart?
Yes,
because I do too.
Yeah.
Now I feel certain, like especially if he gets sent on a wild goose chase to corral all the tech that's been indisposed while he's been in a freezer for however long. I'm like, they ain't said nothing about this show. It was supposed to come out this year. Like it seems like it would have something to do with Rhodey, because like I mean, you know, Riri's her own thing, she's a genius, but that's definitely Stark tech. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just piggybacking off of that for my predictions. I want a lot of what has already been said. I want some sort of reveal with like the humans that are in stasis right now. Like doesn't seem like my Abigail Brand theory will happen in the way that I wanted it to, because the second that Fury and Gaia were in the same room, I was like, oh, okay. Like he at least doesn't recognize what her human form is. But I want like some sort of surprise with who those humans are in stasis beyond just being Brody. And yeah, it would be amazing if we could get like Carol Danvers or literally anybody else, but I'm not going to get my hopes too high, because Lord knows we've been burned badly with previous Disney Plus shows. But yeah, does anyone else have any other thoughts on this episode?
She'll call herself Abigail Brand. I probably. Like
that would be great.
She'll glow all extremisty, and she'll be like, "I'm Abigail Brand."
I would take that at this point. I'll take any crumbs. So I think that's it for today's Phase Zero. This has been a really fun one. Nick, you're at the top of the board, so is there anything you want to plug or leave the listeners with?
Oh, yes. If you want to find more of me, you can find me at Valdizology on all the medias. And if you're also watching this on Mixable and happen to like RuPaul's Drag Race, you can watch me there with Pop Culture. We are it's a show called Drag, and we are now in the final episode of RuPaul's All-Stars Drag Race 8. Oh my God, I settled the title weird because I'm nervous. But yes, please.
Jamie, what do you have to plug?
Oh boy, all my Barbie interviews are up. Check them out. Barbenheimer week, let's go. Movies are back, baby. And also my Haunted Mansion interviews are coming this week. I think they're all technically online, but the articles that accompany them will be coming this week. But I talked to my namesake, Jamie Lee Curtis, Owen Wilson, Tiffany Haddish, Rosario Dawson. Like there's some good stuff, and that movie was cute. So, and I believe our very own Charlie is reviewing it, so keep an eye out for that as well. Go to the movies, show these people that we love actors and we love writers and we support because I'm pretty sure that the actors with movies coming out are bummed that they don't get to plug these movies they work really hard on. I don't think they want you to boycott the movies. I think they really still want you to see these movies that they poured their heart and souls into. So watch the movies.
I love it. Aaron, what do you have to plug?
It's at Someone Gay Hornet on Twitter. Go watch Jamie's Barbie interviews. I am excited. They just put a freaking IMAX down the street from the crib, so I can actually go watch Barbie and Oppenheimer in absolute luxury. Nice. Excited about that. But also a thing this weekend that deserves your attention is they clone Tyrone on Netflix. Ooh. If you want more Tiana Paris before the Marvels and you miss John Boyega doing anything, go do it. And of course, our friend Jamie Foxx, who had the health scare. He's had a little bit of fun with the promotion on Twitter. He said they didn't clone me, but they did clone Tyrone. And I'm like, good. Combating misinformation and entertaining all of us. So that's a fun thing for this weekend.
I love it. As always, I'm at Hey It's Gentleman on social media. As always, go read some comics. I will piggyback off of what Jamie said. Go to the movies this weekend. It is amazing to already look at like the showtimes near me for Barbie and Oppenheimer and just see how full they already are. So go support movies. Go just watch and support movies and TV shows. Go watch My Adventures with Superman if you haven't already, because that show is exceptional. It is so good. But yeah, and then we will be back next week, hopefully with BD with us to talk about the finale of Secret Invasion. So who knows how that's going to go, and probably whatever Marvel news happens between now and then. So stay tuned.